What is good, you guys? This is Steven with All Talk On, and I'm coming with you guys today to bring you guys another PC build. We're looking at a $457.90 budget. Roughly about 450 is what I'm going to say it is, just because I'm going to round it down to the nearest, 450 to 500. I'm going to say it's 450. So overall, it's not a bad build at all. Will definitely get you pushed into that gaming for $450. This thing will game on pretty much any game you want to play. No problems at all. I mean, it will play any game you want to play. Just some games you're going to have to lower some settings because of the Pentium G not being the strongest processor out there, but it definitely can handle some games. I might end up doing a video on the Pentium G and see if it can handle some Crysis 3. Not really too sure, but I'm pretty sure it can handle it. Just not sure if it can handle 1080 at high settings, but I'll definitely do a run test and let you guys know how that turns out. So first things first is we have the Intel Pentium G3258 with a 3.2 gigahertz speed, and it's on the LGA 1150 socket, which means you can definitely throw an i5 in there for future upgrades. We're looking at a TDP of 53 watts, and overall, this thing's just a monster. It is definitely unlocked and definitely overclockable. It's $69.99 at Newegg, and when you buy this with the RAM for the promotion code, you get $8 off, dropping this thing's price to about $62. ncix and Outlet PC both have it for about $65. So honestly, going through Newegg is probably the best bet. Overall, like I said, this thing is just a great processor. Definitely good for the beginner to moderate gamer. Will definitely get your job done. As far as content creation goes, it might not be the strongest thing out there, but if you're just, your standard person who likes to open up web browsers and hang out on your computer and check Instagram or Facebook or Twitter and then play some games as well, this will definitely get the job done. Open up some Word documents, you know what I mean, stuff like that, PowerPoint. It can handle all that stuff, no problem. And definitely, like I said, a great beginner, beginning, starter kit for your first computer, especially at a price tag of $450, which is not bad at all. Next, we have the Cooler Master, because CPU cooler, because we will be overclocking this, coming in at about $15 from Outlet PC and $17 from Newegg. I'd go through Outlet PC. Now, this is the Cooler Master RRHT2. There's a really long name, but I'm not going to go through the whole thing. That's basically what I'm pretty sure it's called, is the HT2. So we have this cooler, which isn't the Hyper TX3, which I had purchased for my cooler, but for my brother's PC. But honestly, I was taking a look at this, and the four copper heat pipes, or I think there's only two, and they loop. Yeah, they loop. So there's two copper heat pipes, but they have they're all touching each other. There's no space in between them under the on the bottom of it where it touches the CPU, and that's always definitely a great thing to have. That's what the Cooler Master 212 Evo has, is the direct contact between each individual pipe, which definitely makes for better transfer of heat, as well as it has less space in between them for air bubbles to form. But overall, this will definitely get the job done. The Pentium G can get up to 4.5 on the stock cooler. This is just to make sure that it stays a little bit quieter and has a little bit easier of a time getting to that 4.4 to 4.5 gigahertz overclock that we're looking for. Next, we have the motherboard, and this is a motherboard I did research on that will allow you to hit that overclock, and that is the ASRock H81 HDS Micro ATX motherboard. It does have USB 3.0, and it does support 1600 megahertz RAM and a max memory of 16 gigs because there's only two slots in there. It's on the Intel H81 chipset, but it does support the memory types of 1600, but I'm not 100% sure you'll be able to run the memory at 1600 due to the Intel Pentium G not wanting that. For the most part, the Z branded motherboards are the ones that will allow you to overclock your RAM to 1600 megahertz with the Intel Pentium G. Other than that, you might only be able to hit the 1333 or 1400 megahertz. It depends on the motherboard, honestly, and I don't own this motherboard. I know on my H81 by Asus, I was only able to get it to 1400, but honestly, you won't really see a difference. And it doesn't mean you shouldn't buy 1600 megahertz RAM, because when you upgrade in the future, that 1600 megahertz will be available to you without having to upgrade. So overall, it's not a bad deal. You won't have an issue with it. You won't notice a performance difference in it, so I wouldn't worry about it. But yeah, overall, this is a great motherboard. Looking at $49.99 from Microcenter. And from all the research I did, people were able to hit about 4.4 to 4.6 gigahertz on this motherboard, not a problem. So definitely something we can use for a cheap price of only $50. Next, we have the RAM, which is the G-Skill Ripjaw X series, 8 gigabytes, 2x4. Now, this isn't low profile RAM, and if we look at our cooler, the fan will come into contact with it. But what I found out with coolers like this is you can actually unhook the fan and raise it up a little bit higher, and it will offer you clearance. I was able to do it with my TX3 RAM, or TX3, sorry. I have G-Skill Ripjaw X series RAM, and I put it in a computer with the Hyper TX3 cooler, which is basically the same cooler as this one. And I was able to fit it in there. All I had to do was unhook the fan and then move it up and snap it back in place. And it looks just fine. It doesn't even look like I moved it up. It worked out perfectly fine. It gave the RAM perfect clearance. So you are able to move the fan up. If not, you can just flip it and put it on the other side and put it in pull configuration instead of push. Either way, you won't have a problem getting it on there. And I'm not actually sure. Let me look at the motherboard and see if we have clearance. It looks like you should have clearance for the RAM. It actually doesn't look like it'll get in too much of the way. But if not, you can just move it up. But this is 8 gigabytes, 2x4 of DDR3 1600 megahertz at 1.5 volts with a very low cast latency of 8. So very nice with that G-Skill Ripjaw X series memory. And it's coming from Newegg for $64.99 with free shipping, and if you buy this with the Intel Pentium G, you get $8 off. So definitely a decent combo. Some very cheap RAM, very good cheap RAM. At cast latency of 8 is really low, so that's really nice. And you might even be able to drop that even lower, because you will be putting this at around 1333 to 1400 megahertz, which will allow you to lower your latencies a little bit. Just try to find your stable point. Don't go too crazy to it. I was able to drop my latencies to 877, 24, and 1 on the TRAS. So that's just how I was able to do it. With this one, with the lower cast latency, you might even be able to get it to go lower than 8, but I'm not too sure. Like I said, you'll have to figure out for yourself. Next we have is the hard drive, which is the Western Digital Caviar Blue 1 terabyte SATA 3, 6 gigabit per second, 64 megs of cache, 7200 RPM, standard 3.5 inch hard drive, coming in at $56.85 from Outlet PC, or $52.99 from Amazon, $52.99 with free shipping from Newegg, which is where I would pick it up. It's just your standard drive, so it'll get the job done. 1 terabyte's good enough. Next is we have the powerhouse of this build. We have the graphics card, which is the HIS 270, 2 gigabytes of GDDR5 with a 900 megahertz core clock and a TDP of 150 watts. This is R9 270. It's a pretty beastly card. It is by HIS, but it's their the ICQ X squared cooling solution, which definitely looks pretty neat. It's got a blue PCB board and a decent looking shroud on it. It's not over the top. It's not crappy looking either though. So definitely a decent looking build, or build on the graphics card, and definitely will fit in there nice and tight. Look really clean. As far as where's the power source, I think it only takes one 8-pin connector for this card. It's at $141.99 at Newegg, and there is a $30 mail-in rebate on this card. So this is a very cheap card, and yeah, that's actually really cheap, $140, and then you get the $30 mail-in rebate. I am not counting the rebate, but it has it. So if you do count rebates, you're looking at only $111 for this, and it has free shipping, so not a bad deal. It's only about a 9-inch card, so it'll fit almost any case for the most part. Which brings us to our case now. We have the pheonix Neos Black. Now, I normally always go for the cheapest case I can find to make sure I can squeeze more money into other things like the motherboard, CPU, and graphics card. But honestly, I went a few dollars over just so I could have a little bit of a better, more expandable case. Now there is no window, but it is made by pheonix, which is a very trusted brand, and there's also the two front ports for fans at the front intake. It does have USB 3.0 because I need that in my life, and we're only looking at about $34.99 from NCIX and $49.99 at Newegg. So I'd probably go through NCIX for this one. But overall, it's not a bad looking case. It'll definitely get the job done. It's got a nice, clean, conservative look to it, not too crazy out there. So overall, cases is mostly personal preference. So you can choose this one or not choose this one. It's up to you. But basically, I kept around a $35 budget for the case if you want to get this complete $457 budget. Next, we have the power supply, which is the EVGA 500 watt, 80 plus efficiency, non-modular power supply. I actually own this exact power supply. I do have a Pentium G in it, and I do have an R9 270X Power Color Devil in there. And the Power Color Devil takes up more wattage than this one. It uses two 6-pin connectors and has 3 fans and is overclocked about 280 megahertz higher than this graphics card. So I know for a fact that this power supply will handle this no problem. I went for the 500 watt because it was only $1 more than the 430 watt. So what's the point? You might as well get the bigger one. And we're only looking at a TDP so far of about 300 watts, which I doubt it'll hit that 300 watt range. Honestly, I don't know why it would say it's 300 watts because I have more or less the same build. I have a Intel Pentium G overclocked to 4.5. I have a Cooler Master Cedon 120M closed loop water cooler, an Asus H81 motherboard. I have G-Skill Sniper Series RAM, 8 gigabytes, a 1 terabyte Seagate Barracuda, an R9 270X, overclocked way higher than this one, and my max pull was only about 270, which is very low. So you don't need to worry about it. It's 80 plus efficient. And I haven't had an issue with the power supply I have in my little brother's system, which is this power supply right here. So overall, you know what I mean? EVGA makes good stuff. They make great budget power supplies. Same with Corsair, but EVGA is just a little bit cheaper than Corsair lately. So I've always been falling towards them. And I do have an EVGA 80 plus gold in my system, and I love it. I have no problems with it either. So we're looking at $34.99 from NCIX, and there is a $20 mail-in rebate from NCIX as well, and $39.99 with $10 mail-in rebate from Newegg. We're not counting the mail-in rebates, but if I had to choose, I'd go through NCIX just because not only is it cheaper, it also has a $20 mail-in rebate. So that's basically it, you guys. That's my $457.90 build. And like I said, this thing is a monster. I literally have kind of the same combo in my little brother's rig, and I paid roughly about the same price for this. Granted, the graphics card I bought was on a crazy sale for about $120, so that really made it better. The graphics card I have is a little bit better than this one with that really high core clock, as well as the 3-fan cooling solution. But overall, I have the same thing, an H81 motherboard, G-Skill RAM. It doesn't matter what kind of cooler you have. The cooler's the cooler. It doesn't matter. I have an Intel Pentium G. I did have a Hyper TX3 cooler, though, but I upgraded to a Cooler Master Cedon. So, but overall, this is basically the same thing I have. Power supply, processor, more or less the RAM and motherboard, just by different brands. So either way, I had no problem maxing out a ton of games with this. Of course, the newer titles are a little bit more demanding and have a little bit more trouble, but overall, I had no problem playing them on like very high or high settings. Even DayZ, I had no problem gaming on DayZ at a mix of medium and high settings at 1080p. So overall, I know this system works. I know it games pretty freaking hard, and that's it, you guys. And hopefully I'll come out with some more computer builds in the future. Just been really busy between the holidays and my job. So, cut me some slack, guys. But anyways, this is Steven with All Talk On, and I'll catch you guys later.